Welcome to a special CK podcast here on the Basketball Zone Cowbell Kingdom YouTube channel. I'm your host, Leo Biz, and today we have a very special guest. Potentially could be our co-host, man, Raptors insider, Robert Misovic. My man, how you doing? He's also a filmmaker, by the way, so he's a great content creator. He knows what the hell he's talking about. I found him in the most random way. He was complaining about how lacking our media, our NBA media as a whole, and I'm part of the media, but other media members, not to name any names, how they lack some fundamental understanding of basketball, right, Robert?
Yeah, it's really lazy.
Right.
I likened it to copying a book report for like a book you didn't read, right? It's an apt comparison, man.
That is crazy. And what stood out to me from your Facebook comment, and this is on the Raptors forum, let's call it that. I was not surprised, but I was happy to see that I wasn't the only one that is extremely high on a guy like Scottie Barnes. I have him number 2 on my big board, and I'm sure we can touch on that a little bit later as we discuss our top 5 candidates for Rookie of the Year this year. But you touched on a lot of things about Scottie Barnes. Can you kind of give us a brief recap of what you said in that Facebook comment?
Yeah, so I just wanted to talk about basically narratives, and how they sort of dominate how a prospect is covered and, how they're projected out. And these early, narratives, talking points, they sort of become building blocks for everything else, right? Mm-hmm. So, he's a project, right? He's raw. He's not ready to contribute. You know what I mean? Can't shoot, no offense, all defense. Where does he play? Doesn't have a position. Came off the bench, right? Oh, he couldn't even start in college. That's something. Not Suggs, right? So I think that's important, right? Like the pre-draft ramblings of, mock drafts, et cetera. People sort of build a consensus, on, okay, well, this is a top 4, right? Plus, and if it's a 4-man draft and you go outside of that and you're the team that breaks that pecking order, right? Especially when your entire media has been selling this very clean narrative of, hey, Kyle Lowry's on his way out, Jalen Suggs is on his way in. And then you go against that and you pick this guy that everyone's saying, oh, he can't shoot, he can't do this. It sort of breaks, it kind of breaks people's heads. They don't know what to make of it. So they start to invent narratives. And I guess my pros on Scottie Barnes are that I don't buy all of that stuff. I do think he's NBA ready. I don't think that being a less refined, let's call him a very raw shooter, necessarily means that you're raw offensively. There's a lot more to offense than shooting threes, right?
100%.
Ask Ben Simmons, right? And I think that his defensive potential is incredible. I think his fit on this team is incredible. I think his personality is
infectious.
It's infectious. I mean, you know what I mean? Like he's a ball of energy, and he has turned this fan base around so fast, like without playing a single game. It's basically a few summer league games, and just the way that he talks and the way he carries himself. And he's had that sort of impact on his teammates. He's had it on his coaches, and he's going to keep having it. I'll tell you one thing that stuck out with me from Scottie Barnes. He goes and he gives daps to all the media members, right? And their cameraman, and the sound guy. At Summer League, he gave daps to all the referees. Win, loss, draw, didn't matter. I've never seen a player do that. This is a guy who's he's special.
He gets
he's
it.
Different.
He gets it. He's a professional. As you said, infectious personality, great teammate. All the insight that I received from him, all the intel was the guy just gets it. Great teammate, great human being. Grew up loving Magic Johnson. He touched on that in his Raptors debut press conference. He has a lot of those similarities, right? Where he doesn't necessarily have a jump shot yet, but the Raptors are known to develop guys like OG, like Pascal Siakam. So I'm not worried about that jump shot as long as he's not Ben Simmons in the way that he's afraid to take those shots. Because one thing we know for sure, he doesn't lack confidence, and he's going to keep shooting that shot, which is a great thing because he's going to keep the defense honest. And if he does that, good things will happen. The rest of his game will open up, which is, we already know what he does very well, and that's playmake, have a great feel. If he's in the post, he's gonna find you on that weak side cut. You gotta love these things. He's already shown it in game one and game two. So man, lots of positive things about Scottie Barnes, bro. And that's why that comment that you left on Facebook just stood out to me, because a lot of Raptor fans, just a lot of the NBA world, I would say, criticize the Raptors for this. And it goes back to perception and narratives. That could really skew how you think and how you look at a player. And, just a quick example about here in Sacramento, a lot of fans still have hope for Marvin Bagley because he was the number 2 pick in the draft. And I tell him this all the time. I tell him, because there's another guy in that draft, Metu, who got drafted by the Spurs, went to USC. He's on this team now. And I said, and I got a lot of flack because I said he's better than Marvin Bagley right now. He's 2 years older, right? Which we'll get into the intricacies of age and experience, but both drafted in 2018. I said, if Marvin Bagley and Metu were both drafted 34 and 35 respectively, not one person would say that Bagley is better, but because he was the number 2 pick in the draft, he automatically has more upside. And I think that's just absurd. I don't know how you feel about the whole more upside because they were a higher pick at one point.
I think upside has to be consistently proven, right?
There
You
you
have
go.
to keep proving it, right? So I disagreed initially with the Bagley thing, having more upside.
100%.
There's this thing about, I think it comes down to perception of selling things to fan bases, right? It just comes down
100%.
to selling tickets, right? So at the end of the day, why is Ben Simmons not being traded for right now? Because his reputation has taken a massive hit. And, Philadelphia maybe wants an unrealistic offer, but you know what? I would argue, is he worth what they're asking for? It's close. It's pretty close, but good luck selling that to your fan base and getting people to buy tickets to watch this guy because his perception has gone down. So when you have the perception of, well, that guy was a number 2 pick, well, what does that not account for? That doesn't account for bad scouting. That doesn't account for the strength of the relative strength of draft. It does not account for league-wide trends. So if you drafted a guy like Jahlil Okafor, right, and the NBA went through a massive shift,
Yep.
right, right as it went, it doesn't really matter that he went 3rd overall, and injuries and all that stuff. And then ultimately, I think the other part of this that people don't give enough credit to is development and situation, right? Which is something that you've touched on your show a few times. When you're talking to I think the interview you sent me
Yep.
yesterday, where right out of the gate, if you don't have a plan for this player to develop them, I mean that quote unquote upside and potential is going to go down real quick, real fast, right? So that's, I think, something that I really appreciate about the Raptors and why I was really happy, not only for the Raptors that they got Scottie Barnes, but also for Scottie Barnes that he got the Raptors, right? Because there is another situation, there's another
There you go.
world in which he is just another, guy on Orlando who's
I
just,
said that as soon as he got drafted to Raptor, I said this is the perfect situation for Scotty, for the Raptors. I said I'm more because obviously I want my prediction of him being the number 2 player, in this draft to come true. And I said, what better situation than the Raptors? If he's on the Magic, I don't know if he would have panned out. I still think he would have. But say a guy like Jalen Suggs, who's always been that alpha male leader type role, he comes with this perception. I think his personality and his game fits better in Orlando. So I think it was a win-win for both, honestly.
I honestly think the Orlando Magic lost.
Okay.
I'll be real on that. I think Scotty is the type of person they could have really used, and reportedly they were really high on him. I think the Kaminga thing was a smokescreen, and I
For
think they
sure.
wanted him. And he's a Florida kid, right? He's a homegrown talent, and they would have loved to keep him around. And I think he's just the type of guy who can, Davion Mitchell, right? Culture changers, it factor, right? Guys who kind of stand for something, and then what they stand for so strongly that they start to get other guys to move off of what they stand for. And whether that's for Scotty, it's passing, right? I think it's passing, it's hustle, defense, enthusiasm, keeping a level head, keeping a smile on your face even when things are going bad. I've watched so many games of Scottie Barnes. Granted, he didn't lose a lot in high school,
Right.
but moments where his team's down 5, down 6, it's that Tim Duncan thing. You can't tell from his face whether he's down 10 or up 50. You just can't tell.
Even
And you
keel.
definitely can't tell from his effort or his and that kind of infectiously rubs off. And I think the Orlando Magic sorely needed that. I think the Raptors have a little bit of that already with OG and, Fred to some extent. They have a
Hmm.
little bit of that leadership. I think, I look at the Magic, I see a rudderless ship in a lot of ways. I don't think Terrence Ross has necessarily got leadership skills. And I think, that team has sort of been lacking that presence. So I think they missed out. Now, we could argue all day if
Right.
Jalen Suggs is that guy, and he probably is more that guy than Cole Anthony or perhaps some of these other guys they
100%.
have. But
He's
I
better than
def-
Cole. Cole, I'm not very high on Cole. I'll just say that right now.
I'm not that high on him either. And, but one thing I will say is I'm not that high on Jalen Suggs either. And I think a little bit of it comes down to what Gilbert Arenas said. I'm not saying that Gilbert Arenas
Hmm.
is always right, but he knows a few things about scoring, and he knows a little about, ISO scoring as a guard, and I think that the media made this myth of Jalen Suggs just, the game winner on this huge stage. It's a March Madness thing, right? And that sort of builds. That's what folklore is built on, right? So now
Hmm.
he's a guy who consistently hits game winners now. Apparently, for some fans, right? He's a guy who's clutch for some fans. I see a guy who couldn't create a shot. I see a guy who got clamped by Davion Mitchell. I see a guy, who has hip mobility issues. I see a guy who's a streaky shooter. Will he turn out to be one of the better players in the draft? I'm sure. He's a really hardworking guy. He's a really good kid. But I'm very, very pleased with Scottie Barnes. I just
Yeah,
want to bring it back
yeah,
to that.
and to your point about Jalen, I felt that way. Let's recap 2017. I felt that way about Josh Jackson. I said one
Yeah.
of these guys are going to be a bust, and I was right on that. I'll be honest. I just don't feel that way with Jalen. I know you kind of do, but I just feel like Jalen does. And again, to Davion gives everybody off nights. It's just what he does. But I think Jalen Suggs would have fit well here with the Raptors, but because the Raptors already have guys like Fred VanVleet and Malachi, who I love, by the way, which we'll get into that. But that's where I was like, they're just gonna build on their strengths, which is length, defensive versatility, and they're like, dude,
Mm.
let's triple down on our strengths, right? And I think that's what they did, and it's an added plus when Scottie Barnes has the ability to play the point at times and facilitate for others. So that's why it was a win-win. And again, perception kills. A lot of people just want to say, oh, he didn't start at Florida State. He's not a good rebounder because of his counting stats. He really can't shoot, but there's a counter argument to all of those things. And as I said in my pre-draft workout video for Scotty, how can you rebound at a high clip when they ask you to guard most point guards on most nights and you're always guarding the perimeter? That's kind of illogical when you truly think about it. You're away from the basket. How am I going to grab more rebounds? And we saw it in game one, 9 rebounds. It just depends. Like it's all situational, right? If
It's we've already seen a little bit of the offensive rebounding from Scotty. He had a few deflections.
right there.
He doesn't chase rebounds, so he's more of a he doesn't. A lot of guys pad their rebounding stats on defensive rebounds to just sort of hang around the basket. Russell
Hmm.
Westbrook, whatever. I've
Perfect
gained a
example.
newfound appreciation for getting the ball up the court quickly. So I think there's actually some utility in your point guard being your best rebounder or your most capable rebounder. But the counterpoint to that whole, well, how can you expect a point guard to be a good rebounder? Well, the counterpoint to that is actually very relevant to the Raptors because people say, well, how can you possibly operate where every single player on your team is 6'9"? And to that, you say, well, our point guard is capable of boxing out his point guard matchup,
Yeah,
and our shooting guard is capable of bouncing out. You know what I mean? So you make up for it, and then long shot, long rebound, right? So as threes go up, that rebounding radius goes out, 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 and I'm not saying that it's going to stop guys like Andre Drummond from getting 20 rebounds
sure.
a game, of course, because there's still those rebounds to be had, but it makes gang rebounding a lot more relevant in the modern NBA. So yeah.
And one added thing to that too, about your point about potentially other guards trying to guard Scottie Barnes. Perfect example, game one, offensive rebounding. If he crashes the boards, guess what? He's gonna grab those boards because we all know most smaller guards don't communicate very well on defense, and they don't box out. So you could see 2, 3 offensive rebounds automatically added to Scottie Barnes when that happens, because they are going to go Siakam, OG, and Scottie. So it's not out of the question that he gets 2 offensive rebounds a game just based on that fact alone.
I
You
think
want to add into that?
so much of NBA offense is predicated on pick and roll, right?
Right.
Hunting mismatches, trying to create switches, creating chaos within those switches, and trying to exploit miscommunication, right? So I think Scottie Barnes, OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, Precious Achua, I think what this team has done, especially under, I think Masai and Bobby's, pace and space, like length and strength, matchup thing, is they've gotten a bunch of guys who you can't really switch them off of anyone, so they can actually switch everything. They can go under on everything or go over. For instance, yesterday, what the Raptors played yesterday, and I was
Right.
watching them. They were trying to shed Scotty. They were trying to shed OG, and of course, you're expecting, if you're trying to shed a wing, that you're trying to exploit a big, but then the big that comes up is Precious. Or on the other side, if you swing it to the weak side, that big is going to be Scottie Barnes playing the four, and your entire action does not deliver any results, and therefore you're getting bad opportunities. The other way that it be looked at is it makes the other team's offense much more predictable. So it gets them out of
100%.
sorts a little bit, and then they have to go into iso ball and helping the helper. I think sometimes when I'm watching this Raptor team, especially when they play, a lineup like Banton, Utah, these long guys, right, with Scottie, Pascal, Boucher, right?
Longest team in the NBA by
Yeah,
far.
it's by far, and sometimes it feels like the other team's playing 6-on-5, a little bit, right?
Yeah.
You passing lanes close down. Suddenly, every single help defender is just 5 inches closer than they would be on any other team. You put the ball down in the post, suddenly someone's there, you swing it out, you think you've got a little bit of space, and the guy's right out in your face. It just shuts down what most teams really like to do. It's smart. It's
It
really
disrupts their
smart.
timing. And even last night, yes, it's preseason, but towards the end of the game, when they made that comeback, I think they went on an 11-0 run, and the bench was in. Malachi was like the smallest guy out there. They literally created about 4 turnovers in a row because they were pressing up high, and I had the Raptors plus 15.5 for like $400, and I covered that. But I knew that if Malachi stayed in the game, that once they were down 21, I'm like, this is an easy spread because they're gonna get these buckets. And the Raptors never stop playing hard, and that's just an organizational thing, right? They're always gonna play hard, and it's these types of things that you just know, or you have to know in advance. And I just love seeing, and I loved how they executed that, man. Like, it was just a beautiful thing to watch.
Isaac Bonga. that guy's
Isaac
that
Bonga.
guy's crazy underrated, or overrated. I heard someone call him a future superstar, and I was like,
That's crazy.
whoa, hold on. But he's a great guy to have as like the
Yeah.
15th guy on your
So
roster.
so let's transition more into what Kyle Lowry not being here means anymore. Potentially some lineups that we liked last year, or even how Nick Nurse kind of touched on Kyle. I think this past pregame where he what was it? He said
He said
Kyle's
Kyle's in the
name.
starting lineup.
It was just
Yeah,
such a
instead of
habit,
Fred.
right? It was just a nod to him and
I
his
think it's
greatness.
wishful thinking, to be
Right.
honest.
But okay, so we heard that, and even last year in the pick and roll, we didn't see much of, Kyle and Pascal Siakam. It was more of a Fred VanVleet and Pascal, which again, maybe he was preparing them for this year. What combinations do you see working this year with Goran in the frame, and a full year of Gary Trent Jr. and now, our guy Scottie Barnes?
Yeah, so this roster is really split for me because there's a side that I'm really for, and then there's a side that I would trade for a bag of chips and some peanut butter real fast.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, the side that I'm not really a fan of, they get paid over $90 million. So I think one of the more better kept secrets in the NBA is I don't think Fred VanVleet's a point guard. I really don't.
That's fair. That's
It's
fair.
it's debatable, of course, but I see him as more of a combo shooting guard. I think he plays better off the ball. It's been said for many years, that he played with Kyle in the backcourt because they were just the two best guards on the team. I think part of that is just because he needs someone to create his shots because he's not athletic enough, long enough, creative enough, a good enough finisher, or a good enough shooter, to be honest, to be a primary facilitator. He doesn't have that sort of gravity where you have to be covering him the way you cover Trae Young or you cover Steph Curry. I've always seen him as a bit more of a Derek Fisher type, to be honest.
He's better than Fisher.
Yeah.
Better than
I mean,
Fisher.
it's debatable.
Are you saying more like in that role or like comp for comp?
Role.
Because comp for comp, like he's definitely a better player than Fisher. Fisher could just like shoot, like just like stationary shots. VanVleet,
he was a defender, right?
Right.
And VanVleet also shot, I think, under 40% from the field last year. And in the finals, like people remember the finals because everyone watched the finals. But as someone who watched all 24 of those games, I can tell you he shot above 50% in 5 of them. So I'm not huge on him, and I don't think he's a point guard. And I think that's a big plus to having a guy like Scottie Barnes who could potentially play center for you on some nights because he's long enough and strong enough to probably do that on most nights. But he could still provide a lot of that playmaking.
So do you think Malachi is a point guard?
I do. I think he's a scoring point guard, but he is a point guard. I'm not of the mindset that you have to be John Stockton to be a point guard.
Right.
I'm simply saying that you have to have some composure with the ball, right, in your hands, and you have to be able to make quick reads, right? And I have seen Fred VanVleet miss open men in the post. I've seen him dribble into traffic with no idea what he wants to do. I find him to be a little bit me first in the offense, and I don't think he's necessarily talented enough. And in terms of lineups that work, obviously I think Goran Dragic should not factor into the future plans, but he's sort of he's bridging that gap.
He's a placement for this year.
Yeah, he is. And I mean, if they dealt him at the deadline for whatever they were looking at, Moses Brown or whoever they were looking at, that might be appealing to the Raptors. But I see the utility right now because ultimately it's keeping Gary Trent off the floor, which is positive for me. And the other thing is it's keeping the ball out of Fred VanVleet's hand. I think of him as a necessary 35-year-old evil at this point. In the center, you've got.
So do you have no hope at all for Fred? Because I get what you're saying. He does have those moments where he doesn't know what he wants to do. But I feel now with literally all of the responsibility to essentially be that guy because they paid him in a way, like again, perception, narratives. But even last night where at the end of the third quarter, beautiful take to the rim, spin back. Both guys fell for it. He dished it off to his big. Easy dunk at the buzzer. You don't see him being consistent with that. Like you don't think he'll sustain that type of movement, that type of playmaking?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I have watched this guy miss too many blatantly obvious passes. I've seen him grind fast breaks to a halt while he tries to figure out what to do. It's actually one of the big reasons why I think someone like Josh Giddey or Scottie Barnes is so special because of how they see the floor and how quickly they process information. It's why Luka Doncic is so great. It's why Trae Young is so great. It's because of how quickly, because the NBA's game of inches and milliseconds, it's really, it's fast. And, having a guy who just sees a pass 1 second late every time, it's just that's a 1.5 to 2 feet for the defender. That shooter's percentage is going to go down. So I don't think he makes people better. In terms of being hopeless, no, I absolutely don't. I think he's an excellent Derek Fisher type. I think he's an excellent guy to pair with an elite scoring guard, like if we had gotten a Jalen Green or someone like that. I think that's an ideal matchup for him because he can have somebody. It cleans up the offense. You go through. He was great with Kawhi. He played very well off of Kawhi, but you need to have that kind of guy, and he can't be that type of guy. That's the point, Right now, he's trying to prove that he can get his percentages up. He's 5'11" on a good day with 6'2", and it's not getting any younger, not getting any faster. So Yeah, so I like Malachi Flynn long term more than I like Fred VanVleet. I think they're similar players,
Yep.
with Malachi having probably a higher upside just athletically and positionally having a bit of a higher upside. And I'm glad that had a better game yesterday because he looked kind of out of sorts in the first game when he didn't get on court. Um, but yeah, I think the guard rotation is probably a little weak. I mean,
Okay.
Fred, Gary. I think Svi has been a positive.
He has.
Uh, he's been really good. I think came in with that sort of reputation as, oh, he can just shoot, but he's shown a little bit off the dribble as guys close out on him. He's shown
That's just the Raptors culture, right? You just plug and play some guys, and some guys look better than what they should because he knows he has to play hard on this team. Because if he doesn't, he ain't gonna get no PT.
That's true. Internal competition, like I look at the end of this roster, we were doing a podcast the other day. We were comparing the 2013-2014 Raptors to the 2021-22 Raptors.
Mhm.
And what we noticed was there were like 7 or 8 guys on that 13-14 team that would not make this roster. It's crazy. Now, I'm not saying it's crazy deep with like star potential, but there's like 9 guys who could legitimately be the ninth guy, right? That internal competition hopefully propels one of those ninth guys to go up a level and become a sixth guy. And I think, with COVID and everything that's happening, you need those guys. And I think the Raptors found out the hard way what, a lineup with Stanley Johnson and DeAndre Bembry and, Kem Birch and Freddie Gillespie looked like last year. It's bad, right? And Freddie Gillespie was a revelation because Aaron Baines was so bad last year. But the truth is, I don't think Freddie Gillespie's going to be on this roster this year. So there's a major upgrade between, positions 17 to 9 on this team, right? And I would argue there's also an upgrade, across the board. Now you ask me like, how is the team going to adjust without Kyle Lowry? It's going to be tough,
Yeah.
right? I think Kyle Lowry probably had his worst season in a long time last year, both in terms of
Last year
games
was
played.
weird.
It,
Last
it
year
was
was
it was
weird.
it was weird, but it's also not an aberration to watch somebody who's 35 years old fall off a little bit. I think where you're gonna miss him, absolutely gonna miss him, is he's actually a point guard. He is a facilitator. You saw him last night. He was getting Miami's bigs involved. He makes
Dominated.
he makes players better. And,
He
and I
makes
think
Deadman look better. I mean, nobody can make Deadman look better.
yeah, I mean, he got Kem Birch paid last year, and he even said as much. He's like, my goal this year is to get Kem paid, and he did. And he makes guys look excellent. He puts players in positions to succeed. I think most importantly, he wants to put other people in a position to succeed. And so, the irony of ironies here is that the entire narrative going into the draft was the Raptors are going to replace Kyle Lowry with Joan Suggs. And then there was this widespread disappointment that they didn't. I think the Raptors did replace Kyle Lowry with Scottie Barnes. It's a very similar, on a granted much earlier trajectory because
Right.
Kyle took a very long time to get to that
Very.
point where he was, a team. Yeah, he was like 31 when he figured it out, and I still don't think he's figured it out quite to this extent. But that overall intention of I come second, or let's put it this way, I'm happy if my teammate scores 40 and I score 2. Like truly happy, not like I'll say
That's
I'm
Scottie
happy, but
Barnes. Yep.
but that's definitely Scottie Barnes, and that was definitely Kyle Lowry. And I think that sort of selfless attitude it leads to winning. It does, because that means that if a guy scored 5 in a row, you're gonna keep finding that guy, and you're gonna keep his rhythm, and you're gonna get people going. And I think that when players who are very ball dominant, where the ball sticks to their hands, and there's varying degrees. There's on the one side extreme Gary Trent who shoots 40% or 39% of the field. And then there's another side, which is Luka Doncic, where the ball sticks to his hands a lot and you deal with it because he's one of the best players in the league. But I think in both cases, it does sometimes make it harder for other players to find their rhythm. I would say this is probably a justifiable critique of LeBron as well sometimes. It's very difficult as a player who's used to, taking 1 or 2 moves to always be standing in the corner. So yeah, so I think Scottie and Kyle have that sort of, and I think that they have replaced a little bit of Kyle's leadership and his selflessness in Scottie Barnes. And I think Precious Achiuwa and, Kem Birch is a massive upgrade over Alex Len Aaron Baines. Um, and yeah, I mean, if Fred and Goran can figure this whole backcourt thing out, it's not. I'm not going to say it's close to Kyle Lowry and Fred
Yeah.
last year, but it's not as big a drop off as all the other additions are. So I think last year they were third before COVID hit them. This year, in a drastically improved East, maybe they could be fifth or sixth.
Right.
You know,
Before we get into the starting lineups, Chris Blackwell and MK47 joined the chat. Chris's first question is, Banton is our point guard of the future. And then MK47 said, what do you guys think of Delano? Does he need time in the G League? Is he a possible steal? Response?
I love Delano Banton, but he definitely needs some time in the G League. Like, he's a mile a minute. He's pure heart, pure hustle. I love the fact that the Raptors got someone from Toronto. This guy's story is just so cool, and this kid is so cool. Like, he's like, you listen to this guy in an interview, and if you don't love him in 5 minutes, you don't have a heart.
Right.
But that being said, I've watched him airball at least 50 shots already. He legitimately can't shoot. And I think what a lot of people maybe don't appreciate is that, when people say, oh, it's preseason, or it's summer league, is that when games actually count, those scouting reports get really detailed really fast.
Real fast.
And a guy like this, whose entire strength is playing fast and seeing over defenses, etc., he has so many glaring weaknesses that an opposing coach could drop and absolutely kill you. They could play you off the floor with this guy. So I don't think he can play in the NBA right now.
He's not ready
yet.
Yeah.
He's not ready, but is he a steal? I think 3 to 4 years down the line with the right, shooting coach, the right strength and training program, if he keeps working at it, I think he could be an absolute rotation guy. Someone compared him very recently to Andre Kirilenko. I could see like a 35 to 40% version of that. He's awesome, but definitely cheating down.
Nice. Okay. Starting lineups. And then your first 5, and then your next 3 off the bench.
Next 3 off the bench. So, unfortunately, starting point guard will definitely be Fred VanVleet.
Put some respect on his name, bro. I love me some Fred.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna say shooting guard is gonna be Goran Dragic, but I would really love to see Speed in that role, just to mix it up completely. But yeah, let's say Goran Dragic, small forward to start the season, OG, power forward, Scottie Barnes, and center Khem Birch. I think Khem would start.
So if Pascal was healthy, hypothetical,
then Pascal starts at 4 and Khem starts at 5.
So you bring Scottie off the bench?
I think Scottie would come off the bench in that scenario, unless Nick Nurse is a mad scientist. So if they experiment enough with this and they think that they can pull it off, then I wouldn't mind seeing Fred move to the 2 and Scottie move to the 1. I mean, this is legitimately the first prospect in close to 40 years where he could legitimately be your starting point guard or your starting center at the end of the year and still have a great season. It's possible.
That's crazy.
It's interesting. And off the bench, I see Gary Trent Jr. just because they paid the guy, and we all know what that means. He's going to get money. He's going to get he got the money. Now he's going to get the playing time support. Yeah. So they don't want to tank his value completely, but I think he really doesn't fit. Precious Achiuwa, because they seem to be really high on him.
They are.
Masai really is high on, and I don't blame him. He's awesome. And then Chris Boucher. And Malachi Flynn. So I know you said 3,
4
but
guys.
I got to give you 4.
It's a deep team. People are sleeping on the Raptors, bro.
Dude, I haven't even mentioned Yuta Watanabe. I really think this
Watanabe, I love that kid.
He's amazing. Like, he is truly a revelation.
And he won't get much playing time because his team is so deep. Like, this is crazy.
I honestly think he will, because
so they're going 10 deep?
Well, I mean, look at look how the team is structured, right? Like, how many of those starters that I mentioned could you realistically see getting over 30 minutes? Is Goran getting over 30 minutes? Not a chance.
25.
Is Khem Birch getting over? No. So this team is going to be like those rec league teams where like 12 guys get like equal minutes. I don't think it's gonna be quite that drastic, but it very well, and it lends itself to how fast they and intense they play. That you want guys out for 6 minute bursts and then get them back in. And at the end of the night, the minutes breakdown is probably going to be Fred having 32, 33 minutes, Pascal having 33, 34 minutes, OG having 33, 34 minutes. Maybe the next guy who has the top minutes is probably Scottie Barnes with 30 off the bench, right? Because you can literally plug this guy everywhere on the court.
Yeah,
He could be
you
your
can.
first center off the bench, first point guard off the bench, or your first wing off the bench. Basically, he's your sixth man. So yeah, so I see that, and then obviously I do see this team going 11 deep. I really do. I think Nick Nurse is really high on Justin Champagnie, really high,
Mhm.
and he should be. I think he's obviously high on Boucher, and I think he loves Yuta Watanabe, and he should. Yuta is a really high basketball IQ player. He's an underrated shooter, and he's suddenly a willing shooter, and he plays his tail off, man. Like someone compared him to Dennis Rodman, like a Japanese Dennis Rodman last year, and I was like, that's not even the craziest thing I've heard today. He is intense. He
Right.
got posterized by Anthony Edwards. He had the best response to that. He said, if I don't take that attempt, I'm not going to play. If I don't
Wow.
try to block that shot, I'm not going to play. I'm like, that is absolutely the right attitude to have. So just a humble dude, and I can't see how he doesn't get minutes. So yeah.
So far, we've talked about a lot of things. Let's move on to the top 5 Rookie of the Year candidates. At number 5, who do you have, Robert?
Oh man, it would be so much easier to start at one.
All right, at number
uh,
1, who do you have?
can I be a homer and say Scottie Barnes? No, I'm kidding. I understand how voting works. I'm gonna go with Jalen Green. Yeah.
Okay, at number 2.
I'll go with Scottie Barnes.
Okay, at number 3.
Cade.
Okay, at number 4,
Schengen, maybe.
Shangoon. Okay, number 5,
Maybe Josh Giddey.
and he'll get
I think
playing time.
he
He'll get
will
playing
on,
time
on,
over
on
there.
a team that's going to lose a lot, and he's stat stuffer. Like I mean, he had better stats than Lonzo. Sorry, than Lamelo in the same league, right?
Right.
And Lamelo just won Rookie of the Year. I just think it's going to be a little bit harder to win Rookie of the Year this year.
Oh, it's gonna be
Yeah,
competitive.
yeah, but these guys who stuff the box score across the board, they do tend to get a lot of votes, right?
Right.
I know winning doesn't play a huge facet into it, but I think Jalen Green is just gonna score so
Yeah,
many
yes.
points. So
Yeah, that is an exciting team, and I'm sure we'll touch on that on a different show. But the Rockets, they have a lot of young talent. They stole the 2021 NBA draft. I still can't believe they got away with Şengün, Josh Christopher, and my guy Usman Garuba, arguably the best defender in this class. So we'll see what happens there. So I got. Uh, it's hard between Cade and Jalen, only because they're both going to get playing time. But well, let's play devil's advocate. I'll go Cade number 1, Jalen number 2, Scottie number 3, Jalen Suggs number 4, and Davion Mitchell number 5. And I say Davion because the Kings will be good this season, barring an injury to De'Aaron Fox. He's not going to have like great stats like Tyrese did in last year, but Tyrese was always top 3 because he impacted the game on so many ways. And to
mhm.
me, Davion is a impactful defensive game changer. So that's why I think where his value comes in. And I think a lot of
Right.
people league wide will notice how much of an impact he's going to make. So maybe not from a stats, from a box scores perspective, but from a value and an impact, I think Davion will be top 5. What do you think about my list?
I, I like how we're both being a little bit homerish here. That's cool. I like that. I like Davion Mitchell. I like him a lot more. I like the pick a lot more now that I see where he fits in on the Kings roster. Um, yeah, I think the entire Rookie of the Year race is always about the narrative and do the numbers match the narrative, right? It's like a story, right? So it's like this
Mm,
guy just, carried this franchise. And so I had like a lot of early hope that Cade would be my guy, like, I mean, on my big board, I had Jalen Green number 5. I had Scottie number 2, 3, right? It was between him and Evan Mobley, and I had Cade number 1. And honestly, when I saw Cade in summer league, something shifted in me where he just didn't look that big, man. He just didn't. And all that stuff about, his teammates in college just not being really good. Well, he chose those teammates. He chose to go there. That's on him, number one.
Mhm.
And number two, those issues kind of persist and will continue to persist on that Detroit roster. And he doesn't really, I'm concerned about those turnovers, but more importantly, I'm really concerned about the size, right? Because he was advertised as 6'8" with a 7 foot wingspan. He looks 6'5", dude. He does. And if he's not jumbo playmaker point guard, then he's a average size two guard. If he's not a point guard and he's not jumbo size, then he's an average size two guard. And if that's how you're going to market him as an average size two guard, then I think Jalen Green has greater upside. Arguably, right?
Jalen has a great up, like regardless of who was in this draft. Like Jalen has a crazy upside because he is legitimately 6'5", 6'6", with insanity of athleticism. Like you've never seen anything like
How
that.
much do you think player comparisons impact draft stock? Because I think it's like the most underrated part of this. Because Scottie got compared.
So you're saying he's 6'6"? Cade?
I'm saying he's 6'6" on a good day. I'm saying he looked legitimately 6'5.5". Because Scottie measured 6'7", right? And I've seen Scottie stand next to Cade, and he's like a legit 2-3 inches taller than him. So I mean, the hair might be.
Scotty's not 6'7". That's ridiculous.
Dude, he measured 6'7" barefoot in the combine. So 6'8" with shoes, 7'3" wingspan, right? So
he looks bigger than that.
He looks it, right? And he might still
be
be drunk.
Bigger than that.
But I mean, it's like I saw Cade in high school. He looked great. I saw him in college. He just looked really polished. He looked really mature. He looked like a senior. Like he really did. He sounds like a senior. He looks like a senior. And it's really easy because he's so well spoken and he's so composed on the court. And then you look up and you're like, wow, 5 turnovers, 4 assists. Again, how'd that happen? So I'm not saying, I just think that, again, situation, where did they land? How are they going to be used? That Killian Hayes,
I'm not high on Killian. Like I'm not high on Killian.
A bust already. I think Killian, if you do a redraft, like this is like the thing you were saying earlier about like, does Marvin Bagley still have upside? Well, where would Marvin Bagley go in a redraft of 2018? He'd be lucky to be 25th. So that's the point, right? So where would Killian Hayes go? I think he'd be lucky to be a first rounder after 1 year. Maybe he would be fringe first rounder. Like he's got some potential, but that potential is just like, there's so many guys like that, right? I mean, we had Jalen Harris last year. Does he have potential? Like, it's just a sexy story, right? I think Jalen Harris is awesome, but
I think he's awesome. It's unfortunate with his story, but I think he's a good basketball player.
Right, and he went undrafted pretty much, right? He was 59th or went undrafted. So it was like that.
I'm also biased because I went to Nevada, but I mean
nice little plug for Nevada there. Yeah, no, he was awesome. Like I loved him at the end of the year, and he's got some serious hops and some athleticism, and I think I saw more from him than I saw from Killian Hayes last year. Honestly,
he's a scorer. He's a scorer.
He's a bucket, but you need those guys. You need those guys. And I was like, like if you're not going to be a star player, I need to know what kind of role player you're going to be for my team.
Would you rather have Jalen or Trent?
Jalen who?
Harris.
Jalen Harris. I would take Jalen Harris 10 times out of 10, and I would. I was thinking about it. I was like, I mean, am I getting blinded by my own hate for Gary Trent Jr.? Because I really don't like this guy. Like, because when he came to the Raptors last year, everyone was saying he's such a great defender. And I'm looking at this, and I'm like, what are you seeing? And I started digging up the numbers, and I'm like, you realize he's one of the worst defenders in the NBA. And like for his position, he is one of the worst defenders in the NBA. And people are like, oh, well, he's 22. And it's like, well, that's not something that, it's easy to work out. Like, you don't just magically become great defenders. He has really bad habits.
Bad habits. Yep.
I'm really surprised that they paid him as much as they did. He's a clutch client. You know what I mean? But that Norman Powell for Gary Trent thing, I mean, the age difference being 5 years is irrelevant to me. I think Norman Powell's a better player, like hands down a better player. I think if you had him this year, he would be your de facto easy plug at 2.
Easy.
So I think that's a mistake. But you know what? You can't get them all. I think this front office has performed really well overall. So you can't be perfect. But that trade, I wonder if they would redo that one if they could. Yeah,
Yes,
because it's
they
not it's
would.
not it's pretty unheard of for a team that drafted a player to give up on him at 22 right before he's up to a rookie contract if they really believe in him. So you can argue that maybe Portland didn't know what the hell they were doing, but I would argue they knew him better than anyone, and they gave up on him for a guy that they paid exactly the same amount on a longer deal,
That's
who's 5
nuts.
years older, who's not a starter on most teams, right? I think Norman Powell is a fringe starter on most teams. You know what I mean? It's like when you put it into context, to call Gary Trent an obvious starter is insane,
That is
right?
crazy.
He's yeah. So I mean, shooters get paid. We saw that with Duncan Robinson. I just think, if you're asking me, Svi or Gary Trent, like it's, forget the fact that one of them is the 425th highest paid player and the other one is the fifth highest player on the team. Like I'd probably swing with Svi.
Yeah.
Like I probably would. Like he just there's a basketball IQ component. He just fits in better as a role player. I don't need Gary Trent being my star. He's
Yeah.
not a star. He
All right,
plays
so
like one.
so we're
Yeah.
45 minutes in. I still want to kind of touch on OG because we kind
Oh
of
yeah.
because we kind of touched on it before the show. I am huge on OG. I was telling you last night how the Kings had two shots at him at 15 and 20 because they had number 10 originally from the DeMarcus Cousins trade.
Yeah.
But they decided to move on from 10, which I was pissed because I had Donovan Mitchell slotted there. And
Hmm.
they went in different. But I'm like, okay, well, there's still a lot of talent in this draft, right? 2017 was a very coveted draft as well, and I was like, well, OG at 15. No, Justin Jackson. I was like, biggest mistake ever. I said that right away. Nice guy, like amazing person, like no doubts about it. But basketball, no. And then they went Harry Giles, which I understood from a talent, like you draft the best talent available at 20. But I think you could have gone Harry at 15 and OG at 20 or vice versa. But they didn't. And, luckily the Raptors swooped them up and, well, the rest is history, right?
Yeah. I think he's amazing. He's been a player that they've been looking for so long. A starting small forward. We used to joke about this, in Raptor forums. Like we had Lamont Murray, Peter Turkoglu, Jason Capono, Damari Carroll. There was like a curse on this team. You just could not find a starting small forward to save their lives.
Right.
And then when they found him, they found one, right? And they found him on day one. And his growth has been sort of stunted by a few setbacks. Like he had his unfortunate, like his father passed away, right? And then he had the appendectomy. Kawhi came in and took his minutes, right? But overall, I think he's ready for a huge breakout. And I'm sad for your Kings that you didn't
Yeah.
get him, but I'm really happy for our Raptors. So dick.
MK47 says, does OG have an off the dribble game or is it just because it's preseason?
Oh, he definitely does. Like he's been working on this for 4 years now. Like, and again, he's been hinting at this. Like he does it from time to time. We saw it a little bit in the bubble, and then he sort of goes away from it. And he's a smart player. Like he has good basketball IQ. He doesn't force things. He's not going to play outside of himself. He was, telling someone the other day, I don't think he took 10 bad shots all last year. But when you give him the green light, he will take the green light. I mean, there's a little known fact that OG Anunoby, he wears number 3 after Allen Iverson. So this man is not. He wants to shoot. I just think that him being young. I mean, he's 24 years old, right? People think he's old, right? People lump him in with Pascal and Fred. They're 27. Like he came out as an underclassman. So being the younger guy, soft spoken, a little bit shy, maybe, I think he kind of took that sort of fourth role, and he's not overly flashy, right? You hearing something? Yeah. So I think he does have an off the dribble game. I think he's obviously working on it. He's showing it. Defenses are starting to gang up on him a little bit. Like a little bit. You're starting to see them send a second defender every now and again when he gets going off the dribble. I think he makes quick reads. That's what I like about him. He makes quick decisions. It's not always pretty.
Right.
It's not always smooth. He doesn't have a lot of counters right now, so I'm a little bit concerned about, pegging him as like someone who's going to be the next Paul George or something like that. He's
Yeah.
not. But I think that this audition for him will hopefully show the Raptors that they have two guys who could be solid B options in him and Pascal, and that neither of them should be immediately catapulted to a definitive franchise tag. I think they could split it, and I think that would make the Raptors a little bit more well-rounded offensively. You don't always have to go to Pascal, and I just don't think that the gap between Pascal and OG is that big. I don't think it exists, to be honest.
Right. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Well, we've had a great show, man. I think that was my dog barking because I think I have to let him loose. But I have an Australian cattle dog. He's 19 weeks. He's a puppy. Still trying to get him to poop outside or whatever. But hey, man.
I have an Australian Shepherd.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
We have a lot in common. Yeah. My girlfriend's sitting outside with him right now to make sure that he doesn't bark during this.
Boy or girl?
He's a boy. He's 12. But people often mistake him for 2 years old or 3 years old. He's very much. He's still got that
I ain't
puppy.
even gonna lie to you, bro. Like, the Australian Shepherd is a beautiful dog. And I'm not biased. I know when you're a kid, like you think they're like so cute, whatever. But I gotta be honest. The Australian Shepherd is just something different. Like, it's a beautiful. I know they shed like crazy, but it's just so cute.
Oh yeah, it's all over me all the time, but I don't care. Yeah, I'm a big fan, and I always want Aussies. Yeah.
Well,
anyways, man, it's been great being on the show. I think what you guys are doing is awesome, and as I told you before, like any conversation which elevates the IQ of people listening to it, anyone wanting to talk deep about basketball, I'm so into that.
Well,
so
I would love
so
for
much.
you to keep on being more of a constant guest with me, especially when it comes to the Raptors. Potentially, if you have time, doing some like post game 20-minute shows after most games. I don't know about preseason yet; it just depends on our schemes. But definitely,
we'll cover Scottie Barnes' first triple-double.
Oh, for sure.
We'll cover his first quadruple-double.
That's happening this year. He's gonna get 10 steals.
We're gonna cover his Hall of Fame induction this year. It's all gonna happen this year.
It's all gonna happen.
First 50, yeah, all of it.
Thank you guys, Raptors Nation. We're having a surge in Raptor fans subscribing to the channel. Let's keep growing, man. I love Canada. Hopefully, I'll go visit very, very soon. I got some friends in Toronto as well. Got a doctor, actually. He's in the medical field. I've had him on the show as well. Big Raptors fan. Lots of positive things going your guys' way, man. Again, Scottie Barnes is the best decision Raptor fans could have hoped for, in my opinion. So we'll see what happens, man. Thank you guys, and make sure you guys drop a review on iTunes. The audio will be a lot smoother on iTunes as always because it's going to be in post-production. But if you guys enjoy these casual, intelligent basketball conversations, make sure to always tune in, have your notifications turned on. And again, thank you so much, Rob. Appreciate you, man.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right, guys. See you guys on the next one. Peace.